Welcome to Turning Point. I'm your host, Blaine Birch, co-founder and CEO at Dryrun. And joining me today, I'm really excited to have actually one of Dryrun's clients, which doesn't happen all the time, but we're so excited to have Drew English, founder of Charter and Company. And so Drew and I've got to talk a little bit before about your business you're working on now and some of the things you're doing now. But would just love to hear a little bit about how you got started, Drew.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Blaine. Appreciate it. I got my start when I was in school and I was studying communications, and that was kind of my scholarly track, if you will. But on the side, I really have this passion for creativity, for arts, and specifically in the lane of video and video production. And so my interest in communication, and videos and art forms started to kind of overlap out of college. And so I started my kind of video production career at an ed tech software company where I was involved with a lot of their video content, their animated content, and helped out a lot on the side with graphic design, printed pieces and such. But really was excited about the intersection of storytelling and visual content, especially as it pertains to marketing and growing a business. So out of that job, I decided, this is going to be a great opportunity to explore that realm further.
So interesting thing, like it's what I really commend you on is trying a bunch of different things and going like, that's the one thing I want to do. And like, cause I had an agency for over a decade and I remember we did a lot of different things. And so and to our detriment at times, I think we didn't focus enough. But as the team grew, then we seemed to have more expertise and we focused even less. Cause then it's like, now we can do all kinds of cool stuff.
Right.
It was neat, but maybe not the best bet. But what I'm kind of curious about is what was the, like, because I'm talking with entrepreneurs on the show all the time, and you mentioned opportunity, right? And that seems to be so often how entrepreneurs dive in as they see an opportunity. That's what we just seem to be wired for. What was it that what was it that kind of just looked like, oh, that's an interesting opportunity, and just sort of helped you kick that off?
Yeah, absolutely. So during my time there at this ed tech company, I felt like I really honed my craft for telling a single story for our brand over the course of 2 years. And like I mentioned, that came out in video, animation, graphic design. But there's these opportunities coming up on the side to work with nonprofits, to work with other smaller businesses on telling kind of their stories and using video to do that. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I had this real passion, not for like driving a single brand or a single story to the finish line per se, but kind of jumping in at these like critical points and saying, okay, great, there's a nonprofit, there's a large donor event coming up, or there's a capital campaign approaching. How can I tell like a strategically timed story and jump in and be this brand's advocate or partner on that story, and then jump back over to the finance world or the education space? Mm-hmm. So there's an opportunity to just say, let's take this from a single lane of video storytelling to how can I partner with multiple stories just at the right time?
Yeah. So talking about story, like how did you get that sense of story? Like, is it just something that was sort of innate? Did you study storytelling as well? Or how did you, because you seem to you obviously have such a good grasp on story, right?
Yeah, no, great question. While I was growing up, while I was in college specifically, there's another local agency that focused a lot on cause-based marketing. And a lot of the work they do is all kind of focused, whether it's non-for-profit or for-profit, on causes that these brands are championing and kind of telling great stories around those causes. And what really struck me and inspired me, honestly, to start what I'm doing here at Charter and Company was their focus on story before selling. Mm-hmm. And whether that's unpacking somebody's specific story in a testimonial or creating a kind of a brand flagship film that focuses on the origin story of that company or the origin story of the solution and the problem that somebody's setting out to solve. It all focused around these like elements of storytelling. And I grew up loving to read. I spent a lot of time in, fiction, nonfiction books. As I grew older, it became more nonfiction and focused on running a business and such. But all these elements of storytelling, I watched this other agency just weave those so intricately into what they were doing with marketing campaigns and
Yeah.
specifically in video. And it just always struck me as more authentic. Pursuing like how can we first sit and discover a good story inside of a brand or inside of a campaign, and then how can we build everything off that foundation versus like how can we build off a KPI. And a chartering company, like I love talking about marketing goals, marketing initiatives. I really feel like the value in what we do is linking video storytelling to actual marketing success and kind of marketing goals. But I really think the way to start is you start up a story, and you start building from that foundation, which is really cool. I think that's what inspired me to start using that word more and start looking for kind of storytelling opportunities inside of every business we work with.
Yeah. Yeah. Question.
Yeah.
First customer, your very first, because I think you always remember your first customer. I know I do. What was the first customer that you feel like, yeah, that was cool. That was my kickoff, right?
Yeah. Our first customer, I would call it was my first customer in my freelance days before I kicked off running a business. And we're in year 5 of this business now. So this is about 6 years ago. This was the client that gave me the confidence, like, oh, I want to go out and do this for a living. Like, I want to do this full time. And it's a group, it's a nonprofit that's national, called Young Life, and they work on kind of student development, and it's a ministry focused on developing students for Christ, kind of at the middle school through high school level. And they do a lot of great ministry initiatives. They work with a lot of middle schoolers and high schoolers who are just kind of looking for somebody to look up to, like a mentor, a mentorship type role in their life. And they just run a lot of awesome programming. I mean, it's just super focused on having fun, building some great bonds between high schoolers themselves as well as adults in the community, and just launching kids out to have like ultra successful, relational lives post high school. And so they reached out to me, and it was the simplest thing. It was, we've got a donor event coming up. We do a video every year. We saw that you do a ton of wedding video work, and we wondered if you'd be up for shooting kind of a donation story focused video for our event that's coming up. And I had really been doing all this corporate work for the ed tech firm. I had been doing a lot of these wedding videos on the weekends. This is like my first opportunity to say, oh, okay, I've got creative freedom. Like I've got a blank slate, a clean palette. What kind of story could I tell? And they really, what I like to say is they leased me some belief. So I didn't necessarily have the credibility, even though it was a small event. I didn't have the credibility or the portfolio to say, this guy can nail like nonprofit storytelling. But they were willing to kind of like lease me that belief and give me a shot at it. And what I was able to come back with, I think, was really exciting and made a big impact for what they were doing at that event. Yeah. But the biggest impact probably was like my energy coming out of that. I just wanted to go start doing this full time. And they really gave me that, shot and that encouragement to do that. And we've continued to work with them on kind of a pro bono basis since I've started this business, and continued to support them as we've grown out of that type of video work. They've been one of those things we return to and try to help support every year.
Yeah, it's just a fun story because it's I think before my first project, I think I did the same thing, like a little bit of, I'm sure I did little tiny freelancing jobs here and there, but there's one that I remember was like, it felt like after I had left my very first job, my only job was about 2-3 years right out of university, and that was it. And then I walked out and got my first project, and it was a brochure for a furniture company, but they did really beautiful industrial design. And I came up with this idea because just talking with them of how it would be used, and I came up with this kind of brochure, but it was kind of folded out into a poster, and you could stand it, like it's hanging on the wall. You could stand it on, so we had all these, like, people will put it up and they'll keep it, right? And put a lot of sort of work and effort into that, and going to the printer and getting it, printed, and it's like all mine, it's all my project. And I still remember that so much, because it's that that first sort of leap, and then after that I'm like, I don't know what the next 20 were. I don't remember, but that one I remember really well. So you like I said, you kind of did this first one, and you're like, okay, this is cool. This is what I like to do. This is what I want to do. What were some of the steps? Like, how did you, because how did you go and kind of get that going? Like, how did you start? How did you go out and get your next, clients and kick this off?
Yeah. Word of mouth is, a small video business's biggest friend. And it really was, just this kind of reliance on building a network, sharing some of the next couple of projects that we worked on or I worked on locally, and starting to just really build off kind of my name and a personal brand to a degree. And these were ultra small projects at that point. A lot of them were, event videos or kind of singular use focused videos that had nothing to do with larger marketing initiatives. But really just being a friend to the people I worked with, being a partner, and treating them like more than a project and an invoice, I think is really what, how I was able to grow early in freelance and then early in this business. Because people just love partnering back with you at that level, and sharing your story with people in their networks. And suddenly I'm going from first degree network clients to second degree network clients, and next thing you know, those people are sharing our stuff on LinkedIn or whatnot, and I'm getting inbound leads through our website. But it really, it comes back to growing the business. It was just how can I go all out for the people I'm working with at this point? How can I go above and beyond what's on the scope of work? And how can I just build a kind of a lifetime evangelist out of this client? And honestly, those people, like, they were some of the smallest, some of the smaller clients I worked with, or the smallest projects we worked on, and they still generate awesome referrals. I think just because of the attitude, I tried to put in right from the start.
Yeah, that's kind of familiar to me too. Like, that was how I got my business off the ground, was just referrals, and then networking, and then referrals, and that was how we did it. I don't even know if we ever got a job off the web, but that was 20 years ago, so that it was a little different. 15 to 20 years ago, that space, there was, the internet was there, but there wasn't anything like you could do now to try and generate leads. So
Right.
that was just sort of how we had to do it. So you're kind of like, that me, myself, and I sort of stage, and I know from experience that suddenly it just starts to grow without. It's like you wake up one morning and go, holy cow, I got a room full of people, right? So how did you, what was the first little bit where you started to grow that team and your resources and everything?
Right. The first step was going from being the guy behind the camera to being the guy next to the guy behind the camera. And so for me, it was a bit of an identity crisis for maybe a 2-week period, where I realized that I had brought somebody on to kind of help me shoot video, to help me edit content. I'd kind of hired them like as a underneath me creative person. And I realized, man, I'm really great at dreaming up ideas. I'm really great at interfacing with clients. And I'm starting to get really good at connecting like their goals to creative output, but I'm not as good as this guy that I just hired. So, talk about a little imposter syndrome there. Thankfully, I kicked that one real quick, and I realized that it's okay for me to step aside. It's okay for me to place this person behind the wheel and say, hey, you spur on everything creative we've got on here. I'll hold the camera bag. How can I hop behind the B camera and make your vision happen, as far as within the confines of the plan I created for the client. And so that was really that first step. Suddenly I brought on somebody to just kind of support what I was trying to do, and they ended up becoming that creative leader and visionary. And that's really where things started to grow. We started to have these awesome opportunities unlocked with this guy's kind of creative talent and his ability to execute video work. And suddenly we need to get somebody in to support him. And I started taking on more of a client-facing role versus being heavily involved in that creative. So that was kind of that first step, was understanding I can get myself out of a driver's seat on this stuff, and it's actually really fun when I do.
Yeah, and it's like that's what where I think businesses always see the most success is when you're bringing people in that are better than you. Like that's just
Yep.
that's and being not only open to it, but like yearning that. Like that's having that top talent, having those people that come in that can really move the business forward. And
Yep.
there is this transition that I think almost all business owners that have grown a company, not maybe not if they're like keeping it really small, that then it or like if they're freelancing or whatever, it's a little bit different. But as you start building into bigger projects and you start having people working with you, there's a transition that you go through where you become like a business owner, you become an entrepreneur. And it's interesting to look back and realize like at this point now, like I said, I had an agency for probably about a decade. And I think I was doing a lot of hands-on the first year, maybe two. And then it starts to go where you're just sort of touching on, doing a little and then less and less and less. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, this is what I am. Like I'm the business owner, the leader of the group, the one that is responsible for the team and the finances and ultimately responsible for what you're building and everything. And
Right.
it's sneaky. It kind of sneaks up on you, right?
It really does. Yeah, I felt that, continue to sneak up on me as I brought a couple other people onto the team, as kind of the third year started and the fourth year started, and I built out kind of a team of specialists on our video team in-house. And so I had somebody that was kind of a whiz at all things animation, and especially in the 3D lane. And, I had somebody that was doing all the art and the design for us here on a lot of those animated and some of those video projects, and had plenty of people who were just experienced editors, experienced camera people. And I started to realize more and more that I was loving handing off this work to them and really getting to take a lot of intentional time to strategize with clients and figure out how to help them succeed before we hit record and after we deliver a file. And that was really like, I realized like my passion is still video, but my everyday execution lane is not video. It was almost a reversion to when I was in school, when I was in college, and video was kind of a passion, and communication marketing was what I was studying. Suddenly I was back in that lane, and I'm like, I'm executing and I'm performing marketing. I'm performing like storytelling and communication tasks, but I'm doing it inside like the lane of cool videos. Which is really neat. That's where I found it. It was clicking. The machine was running at full speed.
Yeah, yeah, and it's that's the thing, that it becomes a machine that is like I still remember a day looking like across the offices kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more people, and then looking across and going, man, I don't feel like I'm actually pulling in a whole lot more money at the end of the day. For myself, but holy cow, if I got a lot on my shoulders, right? Like all of a sudden it's like, man, I got to put through tens of thousands a week to keep this going.
Yeah.
And it sneaks up on you. And that, how did you sort of deal with that sort of growth and like that challenge that everyone, faces as you're growing?
Yeah. That growth was really awesome, and it was necessary to get us to year 4 of the business, is how I like to frame it. When I started Charter & Company, I was 24 years old. I had similar to you, I'd had 3 years at a job out of college and had that experience under my belt. But when I started this, I had no like agency connections. I had no phone book. I had no portfolio. And it really took like hiring the right people and a great in-house team, years 1 through 4, to get the kind of work out that was going to, help us talk to the clients we wanted to work with and we wanted to partner with. But it was really, there's a moment in year 4 there. And so this was last year where I realized that we had hit kind of a ceiling, at the company, and that ceiling was, related to people, and it was related to the way we were running people and operations. And so obviously, a huge in-house team brings with it a lot of overhead, and a lot of focus on just like the ins and outs of the finances, the ins and outs of the projects, and obviously that's a really stressful thing in and of itself. But what I realized on in tandem with that was we were really limiting what we could do by continuing to having to add on in-house employees to accomplish new types of work. So, for instance, I really wanted to get into larger productions. We had about 3 people on the team full time that were handling all the video shoots we were doing, and we had all these opportunities where we could totally go utilize like a 10-person crew, and it would kick butt. It would blow our work out of the water. But it's kind of hard to do that when you've got some bench time and you've got people who aren't being fully utilized all the time. It's hard to go out and try to hire additional people, contract on top of them. So I saw this opportunity as everything grew to kind of pivot the model on its head and say I still want to partner with the best creatives, including a lot of the ones that I hired and were working with at that time. But I want to do it in a new way where we build a network, like a really deep network of video specialists that are like the right fit for every different type of job we get. And so I brought on what I think is a critical person for every business owner to bring on, which is just a really experienced operator. And so when I brought on Connor to our team, who's our operations or CEO right now, he's running all operations of the company, all people. I brought him on to kind of build this network and say, how can we get some of the best finance animators who just do like 3D finance animation, or some of the best gaffers or the best directors of photography that love really working in the industrial side, like the industrial industry. How can we find those people who have like specific passions and skill sets? And that's going to raise our ceiling. That's going to raise the bar for our clients. That's going to, allow us to do some really awesome work at Charter. And then the people we work with are just going to feel incredibly fulfilled because they're getting plugged into projects that suit them. And they're not having to go find it, do the setup work, do the client, strategizing, do the production planning. They're just getting plugged into stuff that they love to do and art they love to create.
Yeah. And I think, again, like that's the smart thing with knowing what you want to do, what you're good at, because I felt exactly what you said. Like you get a bunch of people that are all specialists in the office, and it's like, well, I gotta keep them all busy.
Yeah.
I gotta feed them all. And they have to be generating revenue, and we got to keep the cash flow coming in the door. And there's this stress to do that. And when you have a slow month, it's not just that there's stress that people are not working, or it's like they're not generating money. There's also the stress that they're getting antsy because they just don't have enough to do. So you always have you're trying to keep them busy. You're trying to keep. Man, it felt like juggling all the time. You're juggling, keeping people busy, keeping the staff moving, and juggling your finances and make sure you're staying ahead of the game all the time. That's a really challenging thing to do, and it feels like you've got like a model that works, and especially for video production, right?
Yeah, exactly. The model wouldn't have worked from day one. So I really believe that I ran the right type of business to get us to that point where we could change the model. But this new model, like you said, there's not people, sitting around wondering kind of what's the next project, and there's not people sitting from 9 to 5 without 5 minutes to take a walk because it's the busiest season of the month or of the year. And that's a hard thing as a entrepreneur, as a business owner to watch is people just feeling like they're tossed left and right, and the business is undulating, and that's kind of getting to people. Because I can weather that. Like, I understand it. I have a bit of a bigger picture, but that can feel a bit chaotic when it's, 20 projects in this month and then 2 projects in the next month. And, what are we doing day to day? And my job description doesn't line up with my output. And, that's confusing. And so this new model has really, I think, made even the W-2 employees that we used to have here, that now a lot of them 1099 for us, they're having awesome, successful freelance careers, which is really cool. As somebody who tried to spend a lot of intentional time and resource investment in some of these former team members, to watch them just like take their careers to new heights, that honestly this business couldn't have like solo supported, that's like a huge, huge, cool feeling. Like, it's awesome to just see people, succeeding, that they started here and now we're helping them take them into that next stage of their career just with a different model. So
Yeah.
it's really, honestly, it's really fulfilling.
And the cool thing is they get to go out, do some really cool projects, and then bring that knowledge back to you that you never would
Yep.
have had, right? You don't have
Right,
that
right.
access, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's really an extension of that first shift I made where I'm like, oh, I'm not the best videographer out there, but I'm really
Yeah.
fluent in video and I'm really savvy when it comes to marketing and I love storytelling. So I'm going to ditch the camera. It's kind of the next evolution of that where it's like this brand, like Charter and Company as a business, doesn't have to have the best video storytellers or best videographers sitting around 9 to 5, like waiting for the next job. We can be a little bit more agile. We can be a little bit more like niched to the type of project that we're trying to accomplish. And we can kind of remove it one lane further, which gives the client the best experience and gives us and our kind of freelance team the best experience.
Yeah. And I suppose with that sort of model, I think you've even mentioned it before, that you have to be razor sharp on the profit margins, because like fortunately don't have that massive like every month kind of working through, but then every project you have to take out your portion and make sure everyone else is all divvied up, and you're coming up back with some profit, eh?
Right. Oh, it totally flips the way that we approach project sales, project budgeting, kind of creating scopes. And I mentioned, my colleague Connor, who's now running the operations here, getting somebody who understands kind of those operating margins and project budgets, like getting somebody plugged in who just cares deeply about that. It's a critical part of running a business in this model, because a lot of that budget, a lot of those, are we making positive on the margins? Are we making what we need to make? It comes down to the people resources and building a network of people who are, able to operate at different price points, different skill sets. We don't want to bring on one of the most talented, let's say, directors of photography in Chicago to work on, a smaller event video for, let's say, a nonprofit, when we're not like maxing that person's ceiling. Obviously they're not a great budget fit at that point. They're not going to be thrilled about the type of work we're handing them. Whereas if you find the right person who's kicking off their career, and we can maximize their talent ceiling, and then that type of project is actually incredibly meaningful for their journey in the creative world. Well, now you've kind of married like making a great people experience with like hitting the margins you need to hit and keeping the business profitable. And so, margins, finances, funny enough, in this model, it all comes back to just people, relationships, having the right people on the team at Charter, and having the right people that are ready to partner with us on creative execution.
Yeah, it's amazing what that's what it comes down to with clients, with your team, everything. It just comes down to relationships all the time, and but also know, like, and everyone's listening to this podcast is all a bunch of entrepreneurs, probably 99%. So that's the one thing that we can all relate to is how almost everyone starts out as an expert, like an industry expert in some area, and has to become like a business expert, a finance expert along the way. And it's very rare that business owners come out, they have an MBA. I know you mentioned it before. It's like you got your MBA through School of Hard Knocks kind of thing. And that's, it's like we all sort of feel like that. You hit that 5-year mark and you're like, yeah, okay. It's funny how it goes from a transition from kind of knowing about, revenue, profit, cash flow, margins, all of that, to thoroughly understanding it at your core, right? So then it goes from kind of looking and going, okay, that makes sense, to no, I need this information because I need to know, did we make a profit off of this, right? And how we manage that. And how did you feel your transition went from I know I got to make some money off of it, to like now when you're talking about, we know what we got to do, right?
Yeah. That probably was one of the more breaths of fresh air inside this transition, was going from we'll take almost anything, simply because anything helps go against the payroll or the overhead, right? So now we
Yeah.
can actually be a little bit more calculated in what we pick, and we can definitely say no to things that aren't the right fit, because it's not like live or die ultra critical to just get invoices coming in all the time. But really transitioning, like you said, I had to kind of become an overnight expert in cash flow and finances and all things kind of financial operation. Transitioning to a model where a lot of that's more predictable, or a lot of that's more like kind of up to us, was really cool. It was really refreshing. And I felt like I was more in control of kind of the cash in, the cash out. It took tools like, you mentioned we're a Dryrun client. It took tools like Dryrun. It took conversations with other entrepreneurs and business owners. It took, hours on YouTube or other e-learning sites to kind of figure all these things out. But once you have the tools in place and the data in place, that this type of business, I can choose the margins we want to make on each project. If
Yeah.
we've got the network big enough to be able to plug in the right type of person, I can say, hey, on this project, this is one of those ones where we really want to do it overkill. We want to do it extra. We've got some extra budget because I understand the margins we need to make to cover the internal costs. Great. Let's up what we're spending on outsourced contract talent. And let's get a more experienced animator in on this project. But it takes to be able to make a decision like that and say, hey, we're going to go shoot for the stars on this. Let's make some award-winning work that the client doesn't expect out of this. It kind of takes understanding where the other projects are at with margin and where the cash flow is at. But it really unlocks this kind of I don't know, Chipotle, pick your meat, pick your veggies, customize your bowl at Chipotle. It's the same idea. I can pick who I want to be on what project. I can pick what resources we want to invest into the project to make it a success. And I have all the data and all the know-how to do that now that we're kind of operating on a new model and we have a clear picture of the finances.
Yeah. I know we've talked before about the having that idea of the what's going on in your finances. It, like you just said, it means you can turn away work that you don't want. That's not a good fit. But it also, like you sort of brought to, and we experienced this before too, when we knew we were flush, we were able to sometimes take in some work that would be really high profile for us, didn't generate a lot of cash. We were several years, we were a sponsor of the Edmonton International Fringe Festival, which is a theater festival, but it's known internationally. I think 1 million people go through there in a week. But what we were able to do is actually get exposure there and do a whole bunch of the materials and the posters and all this kind of stuff. And it kind of puts you a little bit on the map for people. And but we knew it's that is a really high profile job, but our sponsorship is essentially doing the work, right? And so, but we knew we were able to do it because we're like, yeah, we got cash, we can do that, and we can do some really cool stuff. And it also even led to one year where there was a much larger production there, and they actually had some budget and a really solid budget for us to do some really cool stuff. We did some TV commercials, we did web-based stuff, all kinds of cool stuff with this. But it all led to it. And you kind of mentioned that going above and beyond, having sort of that award-winning video. And we used to call those projects Halo projects. These are the ones that move us forward. They're not all like that. We probably did hundreds that I don't even remember. But there are these ones that are that one helps us take a step, right? Take that next step to get. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that phrasing and that idea. We've felt that some of our favorite projects have come out of moments where the client didn't have necessarily the budget there in place to accomplish, what we knew we could help them accomplish. And I was able to come in and say, hey, because I know the finances, because I know we can do this. Hey, we'll kind of try to pay it forward on this project and get in and do some work for you because we see a really unique opportunity here, and I actually might see it a bit more than you do yet. But trust me, we're gonna create something awesome. We can meet you at the budget that you've got, and then when this takes off and this ends up, driving some incredible success for you guys, just remember us, right? And that's like goes back to where I said I got the kind of start and I started picking up momentum with clients. It's just those clients who remembered how we took care of them and treated them well and just went the extra mile. That's honestly that's what's happened with every one of those like Halo type projects that we've done here. You know, they've become case studies. They've become like, you know, evangelists who have given us multiple referrals onto like the same type of awesome work we want to continue to do. So it, you know, those opportunities are only there if you understand the risks and rewards of taking them. Because sometimes those can be extremely haphazard projects to take on, where they can kind of sink your company for a couple of months if you're not smart about it. But I really think the more and more we got a grip on kind of the finances here and the business operations and just got it running smoothly, the more I could like recognize those opportunities and act fast on them. And they're definitely, I'm able to attribute a lot of our success today to a few of those opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes the perception is being able to turn away bad clients is the perception is, well, it's a bad client. They don't have budget. You're like,
right.
No, that's not actually it. Sometimes the worst clients have got plenty of budget. And some of the best clients are actually a little tight, but some of the best ones are the ones that can help you move your business forward. And of course you can't live on those. And hopefully you get a lot of your best clients have good budget too. But something I because it's been a while since I've been in that agency world, that you kind of forget that, it's a bit more nuanced than that. You know, there's some really good work, and there's ones you got to turn down that it's like the money's there. You know, like we literally, I remember we early on we had to fire a client. It was the first experience of firing a client, and they had plenty of money. And it was a really big organization, but we signed a contract we shouldn't have. That and what it just led to was massive scope creep, and it would have put us out of business in our first year of business if we hadn't recognized quick. Again, the money side, it's like, nope, we are not going to survive this because we did not read that contract carefully enough, and they're just going to get twice as much work as what we actually can afford to do. And good lesson, big lesson for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been a lot of those, kind of trial by fire, learn as you go moments for me as we're, entering year 5 of, the business. I think the best lessons I've learned have been playing with live ammunition, kind of live on the field. Some of these things, these decisions you make, they could make a huge splash or a big impact on the business. And it just takes having the right people around you, surrounding yourself with like wise counsel, having good advisors, whether that's on the finance side or it's on the, people side, or for instance, for me, it's hiring an operations person, or it's just like having a trusted circle of friends outside of the business, having those people to bounce those things off of and, learn as you go. I think that's kind of the name of the game in entrepreneurship, but especially in the agency world here.
Yeah, it's running a business is like it's sometimes it's the most solitary, lonely place on the planet. But one of the most, you said it, like one of the most important things is for me is having these close friends that are also entrepreneurs that also have been the loneliest ones on the planet, or feel that way, and it's this fraternity of entrepreneurs, and it's funny. Like I know I can go and sit down with another entrepreneur, like. It's almost like you can see them 20 miles away and you sit down with them. It doesn't even matter what kind of business they have. You can talk shop. Like it's the same struggles. And I think that's incredibly important to have that support system of other entrepreneurs. But the other side that you mentioned that I think we've really benefited, I didn't think I did as good a job in my agency days on this side, but with Dryrun, having advisors that are really smart and can help you with those shortcuts and observations from that outside voice. I just don't think we could have done what we've done without that, and that's really smart of you to get those advisors early, because I don't think we did till I was a lot longer in the business world. It was just following friends usually, which is not the ideal thing. Right.
No. Surrounding yourself with, that wise counsel, like I mentioned, great advisors, that is key to anyone's success, is key to our success. But really putting those advisors, their words, their advice into practice, that can be another story. I early in the business got advice or got kind of feedback from an advisor I had, brought on that I did not want to hear. And I didn't take that advice and I didn't listen to that advisor. And, 2 years down the road, I definitely paid,
Yeah.
some of the price of just like not listening to the feedback of people around me. Because, as an entrepreneur, sometimes you just want to look for the optimism in every situation. You want to,
Yeah.
how can I just believe the best in what's going on? How can I have that just like real optimistic, positive outlook on the business or life or people? But one thing I've learned is if you've got, 3 or 4 people that are kind of corroborating the same story, you probably should pull back and start listening. Because while entrepreneurs like to say they sit at this like 30,000 foot mountain peak where they can see kind of the grand vision of what's going on in the business, you really don't. You don't a lot more than you think. And what I realized is a lot of these situations that I would get feedback that like wouldn't make sense to me, I was really in the weeds. I was really like boots on the ground. I had a great vantage point to tackle some of the day-to-day in and outs, client problems. The video server went down or whatnot, but I actually didn't have the giant, mountaintop view I thought I had to see some of these bigger problems. And so looking back, I think it's healthy to look back. It's healthy to kind of play back the past, and look at those opportunities that you took or you missed and say, what can I learn from those? I definitely wish I'd spent more time listening to the counsel earlier in the business. But I've learned from that now. I've tried to surround myself with people that I believe have my best interest at heart, are willing to call me out on my shortcomings or the things that I may not see. And I've just tried to be a real good listener and like listening to understand, not listening to like go in one ear, out the other. That's really easy to do. But get that good counsel in place and then like listen to them. And the second you hear 3 or 4 people say the same thing, you listen like 3 to 4 times as hard.
Yeah. And, and that's an important thing is not necessarily just following one line of thinking all the time and, over the years, as we've, I've had opportunities to bring on other advisors into the group and things. And there's times where it's like, I've realized, nope, that's not the right fit. Might be a great person, but that is not the right fit, or they don't have the right expertise, or they're coming from a different approach that I think actually is going to take us off track.
Right.
And so you have to kind of, again, you have to know when to say no as well. But it's also, like I said, early on when I would get sort of beaten up sometimes with the advisors, it's hard to take it. It's hard on your ego a bit and everything. I think I've sort of developed this thicker skin and I'm so focused on it's success. Like, how are we going? We're doing something really hard. How do we succeed in that? And I know we were recently when a colleague of mine and I were in a meeting with one of our advisors and we were stuck. We were just stuck on this one thing. And we went in and we walked out. I should say we crawled out. It was like we were crawling out of the boxing ring. You just bloodied and black eye and just, like literally just kind of crawl on the mouth guard hanging out. And then we, sat down after and went, yeah, that's awesome. Because what we realized was we were stuck. And when we could sit and evaluate it and go, okay, that made like this, we were doing this wrong. Right. But it not only it unstuck us, it's like also we came in with this clarity of, this is the plan and this is where we were screwing up. And we had this tingling in the back of your mind that I don't know if we're doing this right, but it really took someone going, you guys aren't doing that right at all. So to kind of go like, oh, gotcha. And so it's amazing that sometimes you go into a meeting, you come out and you're like, okay, whatever. And other times it's like, yeah, that just was a massive shortcut. And it's when you recognize that, even if you come out a little bit bloodied, it's like, yeah, that's going to help us immensely succeed. And it's hard. It's hard to be an entrepreneur, right? And you need that help. You need that those people in your corner, but also ones that are going to be brutally honest, right?
Right. Definitely.
So I know we're coming up close on our time here, but and we talked a lot about Charter and Company, but I want to make sure people know, like, exactly, Caitlin, what do you do? Who do you like to do it for? And most important, like, how do they get in touch with you?
Great question. Thanks for asking. I like to say, year 5 here, we're in the business of quality video marketing without the headache. That's how I phrase it. And what we're looking to do today, in the business is work with small or growing businesses that have kind of marketing in place, have made a marketing investment, are looking to get more bang for their buck out of that investment, or go further with a website, go further with their investment in content. And we like to come alongside and say, okay, what are those marketing objectives? Are you trying to increase website traffic? Are you trying to, use a campaign to generate new leads? Are you on road shows all the time? And are you trying to, market at in-person events? And then let's make a roadmap. Let's figure out kind of how great, like, awesome video can be a part of your marketing plan. And maybe that's like one of the first investments you make, or maybe it's kind of like that cherry on top of what you're already doing, and we can plug it in and utilize it to kind of supercharge, your ad spend or your website. So we like to kind of look at that, and then we come alongside, craft a plan, and then go execute that. And so I've mentioned we, do a lot of the production, we do video, we do animation, but we keep that all under one roof. And I think that's what makes us a little bit different than a lot of the other agencies out there. We play kind of a hybrid agency and production house role, where we help with all the strategizing. We come up with all the content, the concepts, and then we're the ones with our hands on the project the whole time. And we're not passing it off to a producer in another company. And that's a great model when you've got a larger business that you're trying to hire, video out for. But for a lot of the small growing businesses we work with, they really just need a streamlined relationship. They need somebody who can kind of handle everything, boots on the ground, and can be there to answer any of the questions, within 24, 48 hours. So that's kind of the place we like to, work at, these growing businesses that might have a couple marketing people on their team, but just really need that extra help with video or animation, and could use a great partner to do that. So you can always get in touch with us at our website. It's charterandcompany.com. And we kind of kick things off just looking at what are your marketing goals for the the quarter or for even the month, and how can we just come alongside and help support you with great video content.
Yeah, terrific. So charterandcompany.com, Drew English. And again, thank you everybody for listening to the show. Again, I'm Blaine Birch, co-founder and CEO at Dryrun. And if you're looking for a way to better visualize your cash flow, visualize that sales pipeline, and like we were even talking about, Drew and I, dealing with some of those peaks and valleys, and being able to turn down jobs that might be the wrong fit and really get hold of your finances, please come visit us at dryrun.com. We would love to talk with you. Thanks again, Drew. Just always awesome chatting with you and sharing stories. It's just been a really fun time.
Yeah, thank you, Blaine.